I took this photo with improper white balance setting. The white balance of my camera was set to the outdoor daytime lighting setting, and I took a photo. I took an indoor photo like this, and when you do that, the picture tends to end up being a little yellowish. So I corrected the white balance. I used the indoor lighting setting on my camera for the white balance, and I got the realistic colors. On this photo, my white balance was way off. I use a white balance setting for outdoor bright sunny day. So I took the photo again with the appropriate white balance, and I got the realistic colors. When I took this photo, I had a lot of outdoor lighting, but I use a white balance setting for the indoor lighting. And when you do that, your picture tends to end up being a little bluish like this. Again, I had a lot of outdoor lighting, even though I took this photo in my apartment. And I used the indoor lighting setting for my white balance. That's why it looks a little bluish again. So I corrected the white balance setting and took the photo again, and I got much more realistic colors. This photo has a clear figure and ground contrast. I use a concept and technique of depth of field. I use a pretty shallow depth of field, and I placed the ice cream within focus range, and I left everything else outside the focus range. I wanted you to focus on the ice cream, not on the background. That's why I use this technique. And I'm sure ice cream is the first thing you notice. You're more likely to pay attention to the ice cream than on the background. And I use the same concept. This is a Japanese delicacy, and it's really tasty. And I want you to focus on this, not on the background. This is the thing I wanted to show you. So I use a concept of depth of field. I use a really shallow depth of field and place this inside the focus range depth of field and left everything else outside the focus range. And same concept here. And same concept. Again, I use a really shallow depth of field, and I placed this flower within the focus range, in other words a depth of field, and left the background outside the focus range. Same with this. So in these two photos you see the details of the flowers, but it's not showing the detail of the background. I kind of messed up with this photo. What's inside the depth of field, in other words in the focus range, is the background, not the flower, which I actually wanted to show you. And same here, same thing happened. So I'm not going to be able to use these two photos for showing the details of the flowers. Okay, this is a hand-rolled sushi. There are several different ingredients, but I wanted to show you one ingredient of all of these ingredients, which is the egg. So I used a really shallow depth of field focus range, and I placed the egg inside the focus range and left everything else outside the focus range. And it's another hand-rolled sushi, and this is a Japanese delicacy called natto. These beans are the ones I wanted you to focus on, pay attention to. So I used again really shallow focus range and placed these beans within the focus range and left everything else outside of the focus range. And same concept here. I placed a couple of pieces of the dish within the focus range. A couple of pieces were all it takes to show the details. That's why I wanted to close up on these couple pieces, and I left everything else out of focus. Again, same here. This is a daikon radish pickle, but what I actually wanted to show you, what I actually wanted you to focus on was these purple or pinkish pieces. So I used really shallow depth of field focus range, and placed these purplish pieces within the focus range and lifted the white radish pickle outside the focus range. In this photo I used the concept of the rule of thirds. This is an ear candle, and I want to show how it's done. So I used the rule of thirds and placed the ear candle, and the person's head along these lines and intersections. Same concept here. I used the rule of thirds. I placed the important details around the intersections and also along the lines. And same here. I used the rule of thirds, grid lines, and place the important details that you should be paying attention to along the lines around the intersections. And this is a previous photo I showed you. I use a concept of rule of thirds again for this photo too. In fact, I use this concept, the rule of thirds, for pretty much all the photos I take. When you take outdoor photos, you often get deep shadow like this. All the details are shaded out. And this is a really nice photo, beautiful photo. There's nothing wrong about this photo, showing everything I want to show. But if you put people in front, you get deep shadow and it's really hard to see the details of the people. The solution to that is to use a flash. Using a flash to lighten the deep shadow outdoors is often called a fill flash. And as you can see, flash used says yes. And the earlier photo, flash used says no, I didn't use a flash. We often don't think about using flash outdoors, but as you can see from this example, flash can be very useful outdoors. This photo was taken at 5:40 p.m. in December, so it was like right after the sunset. It wasn't this dark, but I made a mistake. I didn't check the camera setting, I just took it. I just used a regular automatic setting, and this is how it turned out. So I used one of the presets, programmed shooting modes, for the night scene, and it was pretty close to what I was actually seeing through my eyes. But I wasn't really happy about the quality of the photo. Do you see a little noise or grain in the sky, maybe on the ground? It wasn't clear, it wasn't clean. Remember, this is one of the presets and it's automatic shooting mode. So I adjusted the exposure manually and took another photo. And for all these photos I didn't want to use flash. Flash is not going to help anyway because the flash is not going to reach far enough to light everything up. As you can see, the noise or grain in the sky and on the ground are all gone. The trick is I use 100 for ISO as opposed to 400, and I use the 1.6 second for the shutter speed instead of 0.25 or quarter of a second. So the trick is smaller ISO number, slower shutter speed, and a smaller number for the aperture. I didn't use appropriate exposure setting for this photo, so I changed the setting and voila. Now you can see the details in this photo much more easily. And this is an example of overexposure. Sometimes if you use the wrong exposure setting, you get the total opposite effect. Instead of getting a really dark photo, you can get a really bright photo like this. And in this case, the details are washed out. And I corrected the exposure setting. This is something I drew, and I wanted to scan this, but my scanner is broken, so I used my camera instead. Of course, it's better to use a scanner in many cases, such as scanning a textbook or a page in a book. But if you don't have access to a scanner, you can actually do a pretty good job capturing the details by using your digital camera. Your cameras often have a macro setting, so use the macro setting for close-up range, close-up shooting, and that's what I use for this. Proper white balance setting, use of figure ground contrast, better composition, use of flash, better lighting, appropriate exposure, macro setting. So I've just shown you some of the techniques that could make it easier for your students to see the details in the photos and pay attention to the details that they're supposed to be paying attention to. If you have any questions, let me know.